I'd like to call this meeting to order because I'm in the New York state of mind. I'm calling this meeting to order at 4:37. The location of this meeting is the main conference room, County Administrative Building, 1 Center Street, Chatham, Virginia. Welcome, audience and members. There you are. We want to thank the Honorable Mr. Shorter being here, the Honorable Mike Taylor and his posse. Glad you guys could make it tonight. I'd like to welcome our staff, these two gentlemen from the animal shelter. Your name, young man?
Mike Lee.
Mike Lee, I'd like to welcome you. We're gonna introduce you in just a few moments. I'd like to thank the staff as always. Now, we're going to have a roll call. Mademoiselle, if you will.
Mr. Barber?
Here.
Mr. Blackstock?
Present.
Mr. Farmer?
Here.
Mr. Scares?
Here.
Mr. Warren?
Here.
Dr. Miller? Mr. Davis?
Present.
Okay.
Moving down to number 3, the agenda items to be added. Are there any things to be added to the agenda tonight? If not, we'll move to the agenda 4. Do we have an approval of the agenda?
Chairman, I move we approve the agenda.
Thank you so kindly, Mr. Chairman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Blackstock. All in favor? Or any discussion?
Sorry. Keep forgetting.
Pardon me, I forgot we were on line. Thank you.
All right, cast your vote. And the vote.
And the number is unanimous, 6 out of 6. For the citizens' convenience, all work sessions and committee meetings are now being recorded and can be viewed on the same YouTube location as the Board of Supervisors business meetings. Please remember that the Board's work session is designed for internal board and county staff communication, discussion, and work. It is not a question and answer session with the audience. Accordingly, during the work session, no questions or comments from the audience will be entertained. Respectfully, any outbursts or disorderly conduct from the audience will not be tolerated and may result in the offending persons removed from the work session. As a reminder, all county citizens and other appropriate parties are designed or designated by the board's bylaws. As the bylaws are permitted to make comments on the hearing of citizens section of tonight's business meeting. Presentations. There are no presentations except one by Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to introduce Mr. Michael Lee, who is here with us. He is the new Deputy Director of Public Safety. He comes to us with a tremendous amount of experience. He's been a North Carolina Highway Patrolman. He's a volunteer fire chief, president of volunteer fire company in his community, Bethany, in Rockingham County. Master's degree, executive fire officer program, on and on and on. Super well credentialed. Everyone that interviewed him was absolutely blown away. But what we like most about Mr. Lee is he is the opposite of Chris Slim. He is the yin to Chris's yang, and we think that's super because he brings, just like Mr. Hicks does for me, he brings all the things that Chris needs in his role, and we're super proud to have him with us. We look forward to Mr. Lee working for us for a long time. Happy to turn it over to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to need your help in our winning the Super Bowl for Pittsylvania County. Staff Committee, number 6, and/or Constitutional Officer Reports, Employee Survey Results, Review Analysis, Staff Contact, Ms. Holly E. Stanfield.
Okay, so we are happy to finally be able to talk about the results of the employee survey. So, like I said, we're excited to finally be able to talk about the results of the employee survey that we did in December, and the results were tallied up in December. Today, I really just want to talk to you a little bit about the background, some of the highlights, what's working in the county, some areas of focus that we're going to be talking about moving forward in 2019, and then what some of the next steps are. So as far as background, we use SurveyMonkey, which many major organizations use to conduct surveys today. The questions that were used in the survey were identified by researching other employee satisfaction surveys that employers use. We wanted to note that Greg Sides and Ben Farmer were also involved in the development of the survey.
Since they haven't had a lot of chance to meet the leadership team, why don't you introduce the leadership team or mention who's the members of that organization?
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to. So we have Mark Moore, Lisa Toops, and Karen Hayes, and also Scott Budd. I don't see Scott here, but he's also on the leadership team as well. So as far as the results, they were all calculated by SurveyMonkey, and the reporting was also done by SurveyMonkey. And the survey went to approximately 288 employees, and the total number of responses was 182, giving us a 64% response rate, which is really good. And the next couple of slides are really just to give you an idea of the breakdown of the 182 people that did respond. So from the county standpoint, we had 95 respondents, and constitutional office employees, we had 87. And this just gives you an idea of the tenure of the employees that responded. So you can see in the group 5 years or more. We had a large percentage. We total between county and constitutional office employees was 64%. So that's a pretty high percentage. So as far as what's working, the good news is that the majority of the employees are happy at work. 73% of county employees are happy, and 57% of the constitutional office employees are happy at work. And overall, 66% of the total respondents are happy. So that's really good news for the county. And the other good news is how strongly would an employee recommend Pittsylvania County as a good place to work. 55% of county employees would, and 23% of constitutional office employees would strongly recommend the county as a good place to work. So again, good news. The employees overall seem to be happy at work, and they would recommend Pittsylvania County as a good place to work. So some areas of focus that came out of the survey that employees responded they were most dissatisfied with is health insurance, recognition and respect, development, and communication. So we dug in a little bit on those areas, and as far as health insurance, 40% of the employees responded that they were very unsatisfied with our current health insurance. We don't really have a lot of reasons why. We suspect that pricing may be a large component of that. So one of the things that we had talked about is just doing a mini survey again on insurance specifically to kind of drill down on the reasons why employees are dissatisfied. Another thing that we can do to help with health insurance is continued education, talk more about our HSA plan, and then also focus on wellness. And 2 weeks ago, we actually partnered with the school system, and we sent out a wellness interest survey. So we're probably going to get the results back from that survey, I would say March timeframe, so that's good. Recognition and respect. Some of the things that we can do to try to improve upon that is identify an employee committee focused specifically on recognition and rewards to find out what employees want. Leverage our recognition efforts to improve recruitment, retention, and workplace culture. Tie recognition to organizational values. Talk about some team building initiatives that we can do. I've heard a lot of employees say that we don't do a lot of that, so I think that's important to focus on. Talk about our service awards and excuse me, other recognition programs. And then also we're working to develop a performance and merit system. So as far as development, like I said, we're working on a performance evaluation system. We're very close to finalizing that. So hopefully in the next month or so, we're going to be introducing that. Employee learning and employee development plans, along with performance evaluation, a key part of that is going to be working on employee development. So that will be a key component of that system. Foster a supportive feedback culture, supervisor and employee relationship, that's going to be key, especially in performance evaluations. And then we also need to talk about training initiatives, what's important for our employee population to focus on in terms of training. And then the last area, communication. A lot of employees feel like they're the last ones to know about really good things that happen in the county. So we've talked about ways that we could try to overcome that. Obviously, communicating policy and procedure changes is going to be important. We talked about monthly luncheons with the county administrator, annual kickoff meetings. All employees is a great opportunity to really communicate important things that are happening in the county. We've also talked about an employee newsletter and also employee onboarding, which I'm in the process of developing the onboarding program. So next steps, we want to, of course, be able to communicate the results out to all of our employees, and I think our first step is going to be at the staff meeting we have this week to introduce that to all of our department heads and supervisors. And then along with that, we just need to develop a timeline for any solutions that we come up with, identify what training needs to support those initiatives, develop a communication plan, and then what our formal rollout strategy is going to look like. That's it.
Any questions from the board? Yes, sir, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you. That was been waiting a few
Yeah.
months on that. So thanks for giving us an overview. When you say we are going to develop, or we are going to look into this, is that the leadership team included, or is that who's taking this forward?
The leadership team is really taking that on as a group. And one of the things that we talked about too is that if it's important to identify a focus group that, you know, is comprised of employees to help get their feedback, we're going to do that as well.
I'll say I'm fortunate enough to be the liaison between the executive team and the leadership team. And the leadership team is, you know, they work with employees on a daily basis. They're key department heads. So we really want their input, and then that gets reflected back to the executive team, and together, you know, we kind of work on the strategy moving forward.
Well, ongoing, will that include Mr. Palmer since he's...
I was on the personnel committee last year. That's why I was chosen. We haven't met any.
I think you probably, well, it's interesting the way the survey came about. You kind of had great minds thinking at the same time. The leadership team, we tasked them with employee engagement and improving communication. They started saying, well, we need a survey. About that time, the Board of Supervisors said, we don't really know how employees feel, we need a survey. So the board said, let's do a survey. And I think the board actually kind of appointed Mr. Palmer to be involved. And at the same time, the leadership team was working on it, so we just came together.
Yeah, we work well together. I don't feel like we have a plan going forward that I'm aware of that you all met. I think that's going to be the key to this. We have the data. Now what do we do?
Right.
It's in our hands to be responsible.
Yeah.
Just from my standpoint, I think it's important for the board to have a liaison to that committee too, whether it's Mr. Palmer if he wants to do it, or whether it's someone else on the personnel committee. But I mean, we ought to have someone working with, you know, the leadership team so they can relay all those messages to us too.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I'm good.
You started.
No, I'm good with going forward.
We've already sworn him to, you can't repeat everything you hear in the so he'd be a good fit.
Were there any questions in the survey at all for the employees to have any type of input as how they felt about county leadership, including the board? Was there any questions along those lines in the survey?
I think it's just direct reports.
Well, there was a question about, do you feel comfortable giving upward feedback?
Yes.
To the supervisor? But,
Mhm.
so that could extend beyond your direct supervisor, but nothing specifically now about.
One of the things we try to protect, when it comes to the board itself, and this is always, you try to keep a little buffer between the supervisors and employees. So, like Mr. Smitherman is the personnel person, as far as handling things for you all. So we try to keep things with, direct chain of command or whatever, so somebody doesn't say, well, I got a problem, I'm going to talk to my supervisor. I don't like the way my boss talks to me, so I'll go to the board member. So we do try to preserve that, but, there was 20-some questions. Leadership team came up with some questions. With Mr. Farmer, we came up with some. Mr. Smitherman had some questions. We kind of folded that all into the 22 or so, which is a part of your packet tonight. At your convenience, you can look through all of it.
I will say, where it says 40% would strongly recommend that our county is a good place to work. That does concern me, because a lot of the surveys that we do, I'll speak from where I come from in my employer, that's the last question you typically answer. That's that sums it all up. That's the one that you kind of key in on what, because other stuff you can look at more direct, whether it's insurance related, whether it's pay. That's the one that kind of encompasses overall happiness. So that concerns me about being 40%.
I think one of the things that Holly would tell you that has come up in our group is the first survey is kind of your starting point. It sets your baseline to define what some of the issues are. We got an arrangement with SurveyMonkey now, so we intend to resurvey and kind of drill down. And like Mr. Farmer says, if you find something causes you a little bit of concern, then that's something you follow up on in the next survey. Drill down to what is the problem? Is it this level or is it this level?
I agree.
I like the overall survey itself. I think when you dig into it, it gives us a good picture of how they feel. And I think the team did a good job.
Thank you.
I'm surprised we hadn't saw anything on social media about SurveyMonkey.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Any other statements? Ms. Stanfield, you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for that. And moving along, I would say to all of us, I like the discussion, and I do like the movement as far as these questionnaires going out to staff as well as the employees. But one thing I can most assure all of us, as we are accountable, we can always do better. So that applies to the supervisors as well. Moving on to number B, legislative committee recommendations. Mr. Esquire, J. Baden Hunt, this is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've beat you over the head with this a couple times, so this is not going to be unfamiliar to you. The legislative committee met on January 28th, and they had 5 recommendations for the full board. We're not seeking any action tonight to set anything in stone. What those recommendations were is just to set some public hearings tonight to get some comment and potential action at the March meeting. So I'll quickly walk you through what the legislative committee's recommendations were from the January meeting. The first issue they tackled is the elderly and indigent tax exemption proration. As you remember, we had a situation where someone died in December of the year and was kicked out of the elderly exemption for the entire year. The state code allows you, if you adopt an ordinance, to prorate that. If there's a change in circumstances, if someone comes into money, someone dies, someone sells a house, all this change to code section 6-65 and 6 of our code would do is allow you to just prorate the time that you were in the system versus the time you're out of it, and just pay that prorated amount. That's a recommendation from the legislative committee for the full board tonight. There's an agenda item tonight under matters from work session where we'll be seeking the ability to advertise this for a public hearing in March. The second issue is land use application late filing with a penalty. As you remember, Mr. Farmer had a constituent that couldn't get his land use paperwork in order and time and was kicked out of the land use program for the whole year. The state code allows you to have a late filing period for land use if you pay a penalty. The legislative committee, it's on page 42, made a recommendation to allow a late filing with a $100 per parcel penalty. That's consistent with other penalties that Ms. Hammock has. Again, the board unanimously recommend that, and the legislative committee unanimously recommend that, and is seeking at tonight's meeting the authority to hold a public hearing to make that go into effect in the future in the March meeting. The next issue that there was a recommendation about is kind of an unusual situation. It's about the rezoning for Mr. Hilton, and I will throw this to Mr. Sides because he's been more involved in this than me, and this is just merely a recommendation to begin the process of rezoning his property to be initiated by the Board of Supervisors, which will involve going through the Planning Commission and then also making its way back to the Board of Supervisors.
Right. This was discussed pretty extensively at our last work session, and it was an unusual situation. And I think that being the key, it's a fairly unusual situation that occurred, and I think this group felt consistently that it was okay for the board to authorize rezoning in a case like this where the applicant, at no fault of their own, it was a mistake in transcribing from one point to the next years and years and years ago, that the board authorized Tatum to go ahead and rezone Mr. Hilton's property. And basically the committee recommended that to the full board, that the board be able to initiate rezoning of the Hilton property. And also we had another case that was very similar that were following the same process. So, and those rezonings are already working their way through the system.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sides. The next issue is the legislative committee reviewed a potential animal public nuisance ordinance. As you recall, we've had situations where individuals are being animals are creating nuisances for people, and it has not risen to the level of a bite or an attack, and therefore we can't either seize the dog or charge them with a vicious or dangerous dog because there's been no actual attack. Many localities have animal public nuisance ordinances, and this gives one more tool in the toolbox of the animal control officers to allow citizens to go to a magistrate, and if an animal, and this does not apply to livestock, and we've run this by the farming community and they're okay with this. This only applies to domestic animals, a dog, cat, or a canine crossbreed. It does not apply to livestock. If a domestic animal is doing one of the things 1 through 10 on page 43, a citizen can go to the magistrate and ask for a summons to be issued, and then a case will come before the court where the judge will determine if this animal is a nuisance or not. And if the animal is a nuisance, they have to abate the nuisance, and if they fail to, there are some fines associated with it, and the animal can be seized. A nuisance animal is one who attacks or disturbs other animals, persons, or vehicles by chasing or biting, trespasses upon another property to damage property, attacks animals, habitually running at large, meaning 3 or more convictions for running at large within a restricted area for 2 years, creates odors, noxious or offensive odors, creates filth, making excessive noises in violation of noise orders. All these things are what other localities have done to combat this problem. This was largely taken from Bedford County's ordinance. The board recommended that, the legislative committee recommended the board to just hold a public hearing to see if citizens would like something like this to be on our books. Again, this would just allow the animal control officers to have another tool in their toolbox to combat these animals. We have an unfortunate situation, I believe, in Mr. Farmer's neighborhood that we've been working with, that this would allow the situation to maybe be rectified. So again, we're just seeking public hearing for March. No obligation to adopt this, but just have a public hearing in March to see what public comment is about this. And the final issue is the board, at a meeting at the end of last year, I believe, asked for us to bring back a dilapidated structural removal matrix. I believe that was Mr. Blackstock was really championing that. Mr. Sides has worked hard, and on page 45 of your legislative committee packet, there is a dilapidated structural removal matrix, and I'll throw this to Mr. Sides to explain his concept that he came up with.
Yes, this matrix was discussed with the legislative committee, and I think most of the board members were here at that time. It's just a way to prioritize or rate structures. It's largely towards, if you've got limited funds and you can only tear down one or two structures that become dangerous structures, then how do you rate or evaluate the worst cases? So it's a matrix that's based on a 100-point system. If you're in the worst case scenario, if you're on a primary road, if you're visible from neighbors, I mean, just write down a list. If it's zone residential, all of the worst case scenarios, it would total up to 100. So any number below that would be a little bit less of an impact to the neighborhood. So this would be a way for board members to use to rate the structures in their districts. You also asked about a funding source, and Ms. Vanderhat has included a line item in the new budget for the removal of dilapidated structures. So we're moving towards a way to prioritize the structures and also a funding source. So the legislative committee recommended that this be referred to the full board for review and potential adoption.
Does anybody on the board have any questions about this before we ask for some action on that tonight's meeting?
Yes, sir.
I don't really have any questions, but I have a comment.
Okay.
I know that Bedford County, we need to, if you utilize their animal control code or ordinance, you need to look at that closely, and I'll tell you why. They don't allow dog hunting up there. On one side of the railroad tracks here in Pittsylvania County, you do have the Department of Game and Fisheries allows dog hunting. So you don't want to have anything in there. You need to take a look at how that affects hunting with dogs on that side of the railroad tracks. And I've looked over it, but you may want to look at that closely.
So section F of it, and I know you haven't looked at it closely, this ordinance does not apply to livestock, law enforcement, search and rescue activity, obedience training, hunting, field trials, stuff like that. So there is an exception for what you see.
You don't want somebody coming back. I heard dog food.
Right, exactly.
But if a bunch of beagles is running a rabbit and cross over the line, you see where I'm going with that.
Greg, have you gotten everything you need on yours?
I have.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, unless there's any other questions, we can move on.
Okay, moving on, solid waste pilot program review. Mr. Richard N. Hicks.
We got a slide presentation. Okay, this is a solid waste update and an update on our convenience center pilot program. Can I cut it off?
Get the Midas touch on
Stand on your left leg.
Back in the fall, the board authorized us to do a pilot program for 5 convenience sites. These are the 5 here. You got Flagler 622. It's been operating about 18 weeks, or about 19 weeks now. 58 West, Mount Herman, Mount Cross, and Blair's. Boy, I keep hitting.
Always works really from the spirit.
It's the ID 10T arrow. Before we started the pilot program, this is what most of our Mondays look like at these 5 convenience centers. This is just another picture of the Berry Hill site. This is Broswell 622, 2 Mondays ago. The significant difference in this.
Sit tight.
say, we even added a section of wall thinking we were going to have to put a third box there. Since the pilot program, those two boxes have more than ample the waste that is there. There is a cost. He was spending about $13,000 per site to have 4 site attendants there. Now it's costing us just under $60,000, so it's about $40-some thousand of additional cost. The Broswell site, prior to the site being manned and there's open top boxes, we were averaging about 21 tons per week. That average now is down to about 9 tons. So that's been cut by 50%. The packer boxes are staying the same. I think we reduced some of the waste, so we got more trash going into the packer boxes, but our actual tonnage has stayed about the same. And this is at the Broswell site. The other sites, you look at the boxes there. Berry Hill was averaging about 16 tons. This down to about 11 tons. Mount Herman was averaging 27 tons. It's down to about 21 tons. Layers at 29. Business has basically been cutting down. Mount Cross has gone from about 17 tons to about 13 tons, and like I said, the Broswell 622 site is about half what it was. Now this is only 16 weeks for Berry Hill, 13 weeks for Mount Herman, 12 weeks for Layers, 18 weeks for Broswell. Some of it could be weather related. We could see some other reasons for that. We're going to keep monitoring these sites to see if that trend continues. Talking about beat, what's the name? David Letterman by 11 reasons. I think these are your top 21 reasons why a manned site is better than an unmanned site. We don't have scavenging at the sites anymore. Our senior citizens are more comfortable going to these sites. The sites are clean. If you've been to sites, our package units, we operate them on a more frequent basis. They're not overflowing when the guy sits there. We've seen fewer contract debris. We're taking less loads to the landfill. Our attendants are able to assist senior citizens. They're actually getting bags out of the cars and stuff for our senior citizens now. We got a lot less bag waste going into the open top boxes, which is air when you haul those boxes full of bags. But there's a significant amount of air you haul, and that's been significantly reduced. I'm at the Broswell site. There was a significant use by folks out of the county. We've just about stopped that now. I'm at the Berry Hill site, and there was a significant use by folks out of state. We think we've stopped that. If you pull in there now with a NC tag, they'll almost fight you. Our citizens walk in and say, "Why is that North Carolina tag at my gunbacker site? He's not supposed to be here." Our citizens like it a lot better when you go to the site. You got room in that open top box now. It's not all over the ground. So there's there's basically some significant difference in the way the sites operate now.
Good job of stopping that riffraff in Carolina.
They didn't stop all of us from getting there.
Yes, sir, I agree with you, Mr. Blackstock. That's what I was going to say. It took a North Carolina Tar Heel fugitive to come over here to get our trash in the line, and I appreciate it.
Okay, holiday operations, I think most of you saw it was significantly better this year than it was last year. And of course, one thing that helped, Christmas and New Year's fell on a Tuesday instead of a Monday. That was big. We hired First Piedmont to pull boxes for us on that Wednesday and Friday. At the green box sites, they pulled an extra day. Some of our staff went out Sunday and they pulled boxes. There is currently a part-time county staff member that goes to all the green boxes every day, picks up trash, and just tires and stuff, he gets those up. And I say, you know, from last year to this year, we went from a B minus, you know, to a B plus. I think we did significantly better this year. Christmas Day and New Year's Day are the only days that our staff don't work. Those days are still going to be bad days because you got so many people still using those sites. As you know, we've been having trouble with our trucks. We do have 6 going right now, so things haven't been better. We did have 1 vacancy during that time, so instead of 6 drivers, we only had 5 drivers or supervisors driving. And we didn't have enough open top boxes, but we're continuing to paint those boxes, so we don't think that'll be an issue next year. Recycling, we've got about 11 sites that have cardboard boxes now, and since that time we've also added plastics recycling, and we got Mount Herman, Mount Cross, and I think Broswell boxes now. So we've got 3 boxes out now, and we'll be adding more in the future. People continue to ask for cardboard, recycling cans, and newspapers, and plastic. So we're trying to meet these requests. This is a picture of a box at Mount Cross for plastics, and that was the newspaper box we brought in. We repainted it, and it's been fixed up. It's now been used for plastic. At the Broswell site, if you've been there, the paper box is sitting in the rocks. Over there by the side, we got a can box that is sitting in another section of the site and everything. It's all sort of scattered about. People pull in and you got to back out and you got to wait for the next truck to move before you can pull up. So what we would propose to do at the Broswell site, there are several bad places in existing asphalt that will need to be fixed. So what we'd like to do is to get a cost estimate to have a circular traffic pattern there, and our boxes would be in the center, 1 for newspapers, 1 for cardboard, 1 for plastic, and 1 for cans. We think that'll help out a lot on the flow there. So our firm, SDS Engineers, drew this up for us. So we'd like to move forward on this. And then the final item here, Saturday operations. We started September the 8th, and as of the last Saturday, we average about 2 people coming on Saturdays. And as you see in the last few weeks, there is a good portion of that coming from the pipeline crews. So there's not many citizens using Saturday operations. And this has been about 5 months. We pay overtime, for our staff to be there. And then finally, staff recommendations. The 5 pilot sites we'd like to continue. Our 2 worst sites now are the old Mayfield site and the Ringgold site. And what we're proposing to do on that one is to put a person there in the morning and a person there in the evening. We can open the gate and shut the gate just like we're doing the other 5 sites, but you only have 2 people at that site as opposed to 4. The Roswell 622 site, we would like to get bids on that paving that I'm on that site. We'd like to stop the Saturday operation at the landfill, and we would continue. We're still looking for sites for the 3 new convenience centers. That's our staff recommendations at this time, and I'll try and answer any questions anybody has.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hicks, looking back at the figures to man the sites, I think if I remember right, it was about $47,000 in difference.
Yes,
And
just
so
about 46,000.
Yeah, and so we manning 5 sites now, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's about $230,000. Where is that money in the budget? Was that money already in the budget, or are we saving from somewhere else? So help me understand that.
Well, it's being funded by the $120 annual fee. It's in salaries, part-time salaries in the solid waste budget. One thing Kim and I are challenging Richard with is maybe lightening up on some of these, and hopefully Hallie and Matt won't publish this, but we're thinking about maybe staggering some of those shifts and eliminating one of those 4 people at those 5 sites and repurposing them elsewhere so we can keep a cap on that part-time personnel cost. But it's 100% funded through the solid waste.
So it's already in the budget for the year?
Yes.
It's in the current year's budget?
Yes.
You budgeted for that?
Yes.
And see, next year's budget, we've already got that in there also, so.
The follow-up, the recycling, I think it's wonderful, but I don't see anything over there north of Chatham, and we like to recycle over there too.
We have some, and we talked a lot about.
I think we haven't.
Getting
added some. Rockford has a cardboard box now.
It stays full. I've been watching it myself. People
Mount
are
Cross,
using cardboard.
Mount Cross and Mount Herman. That might be Washington.
And the plastics we have, we only got 3 plastics recycling now, but.
I'm just suggesting, I'd like to see something more again. I realize that we're not as heavily populated, but we do have a lot of people that request. I know since I've been on the board, that's been I've had people say, we got plastic bottles, we say, we're trying to recycle, and the county's not helping us. And I applaud the efforts of the staff and head in this direction. I know we can't do it overnight. I certainly would like to see something over.
At 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, we're going to be in Henry County taking a look at how they do recycling. There's apparently a big industrial recycler over there that has freed up a market. One of the challenges we have in the recycling is nobody wants this stuff anymore. There's no market. But we've seen, and Richard can attest to it, if we put a recycling box there, it fills up. In fact, he's increased frequency of dumping 400% in Mount Herman from once a month. Is it weekly now?
See, cardboard, we started once a month. Several sites were doing weekly pickup now because there's so much cardboard coming in.
The thing about how many people are using those water bottles, buying water. Just go into any food line or any, I don't want to single out any grocery store, but if you go in and you see stacks of water, those bottles are ending up in the landfill. And they can be, recycled.
No, we want
see,
to
Mount Herman, after about 2 weeks, that plastic bottle is just about full. So they're really using it.
The water's cleaner on the northern end.
I agree with you. I drink that water too.
Living in it too.
Mr. Barber, hold up, Mr. Barber. Go ahead, Mr. Barber. I hate, Ben, I'll get back to you. Go ahead, Ben had it first.
The savings, weighing what we're paying them, that's kind of what I was interested in seeing. I know the tonnage is, have we done analysis on that?
The tonnage, it's too early to know. Where we're going to get our savings is fuel, wear and tear on vehicles, less pushing in the landfill. It's too early to know.
Okay, that was really what I was interested in. We sort of thought to see where it actually, if the cost outweighs it, the savings outweighs the cost, I think it'd be a good idea. We'll see. And secondly, I was asking me this, if you got a load of tires and you take them to the landfill, is that any time during the day, the operations, you can take tires to the
I
landfill?
think so, it should be.
Do you have to call or just show up with your load of
Just
tires?
show up and pay.
And they're whole tires, they'll take whole tires, and is it still, do we come at $3?
I think $3 per tire.
I'll
you
pass
do
it on,
show
I
up,
know
pay.
guy said he had a pro load, he's gonna hand over when I was telling you, in the garage.
Okay, Mr.
Go
Palmer.
ahead.
All right, so I'm piggybacking a little bit on both of theirs. I could be wrong, but this 40,000 savings, that was just an 18-week projection. I've done some quick math here, I could be way off. But I got it around 135,000 per site additional. So that's $500,000.
Wow.
In my quick math. I could be wrong, but somebody back me up.
I'm sure you found a staff person would be willing to do that. I hope it's true. I hope it's true too. Sounds really good.
And that's, then I'll come back to that question, I'm saying if we're spending $500,000 on that, what does it equate to the tonnage savings? So that's,
Actually, only
I know that's hard to put you on the spot.
230-some thousand for the 5 sites.
On salary?
Yeah.
Okay, because I got 40,000 in 18 weeks on one. Then I'm on-
No, that's annual. That was annual.
That's not
annual
18
cost
weeks?
for salary. 18 weeks
Okay.
is
That's
the
52.
time, that we've been shutting the gates at the site.
Okay.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I had the Saturday hours. How much advertising did we do to our general public to let them know that you have, this list, it's hard for me to believe that we wouldn't have more usage at if we have.
It is hard to believe. I think, personally, I think it's a function of how big we are. Nobody just wants to go to drive for it, depending on how far away they live. We advertise the exact same way we advertised on the solid waste league, which was the newspaper and Facebook, and our new Pittsylvania landfill.com.
We did all those meetings and still nobody knew till they got a bill.
Yeah, nobody, 6 months of constant talking to people didn't even know we levied the fee. So at the end of the day, the demand doesn't seem to be there. I think there is a compromise if the board is reticent to cutting it fully as, say, first Saturday every month, right?
I was actually thinking,
I don't have a problem.
once a month.
Yeah.
But I think it ought to be all day. If we go to once a month, it ought to be all day. Because, if you're gonna do yard work,
Yeah. Can't get out there by noon.
no, and you're working on Friday.
Or we could do it at 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., just an abbreviated day. But I agree, once a month makes sense.
And it takes 2 people, because you gotta have one person at the scale, you gotta have one person.
Let's try it.
In the hall.
Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
Just wanted to pass on, congratulate the staff. I've got nothing but positive feedback from the people in my district on how clean the sites are and how well they are. But I only have one complaint. The attendant at Mount Cross keeps helping me empty my truck, and I'm not a senior citizen, so I'm trying to knock it off.
It's all about appearance.
Thanks, Ray Beard.
I do have a lot of mileage on it. I agree.
Put him down at grid, he can help me.
From start to finish, your study says it costs you about $62 per ton, to dispose of a ton of trash. So I think, there are some savings there. We'll get there.
I cut through Ed Hardy Road the other week, and the only thing I was worried, and it kind of concerned me, I saw more trash on that secondary road. I hope, that's what I was worried about, is that they go up there and can't dump it, they go dump it somewhere else. I did see an increase in that. Sheriff Taylor, they out all over the place. I don't know if y'all seen additional trash piles throughout the county, but I have witnessed a few of them myself.
I saw a mattress in a box frame.
Yeah, so I hope that doesn't become a problem, then you got another problem, instead of dumping in the dump, it's going on the side of the road.
Well, I'm gonna give you the answer that Mr. Sides gives me when I complain about something. He says it's because it's the winter time and the trees are
You know, I have any more discussion?
Could I ask one more thing? Sheriff Taylor, you the man to ask us, what about that inmate program we had? Did that not go anywhere, whether it was actually putting inmates out to clean secondary roads?
Well, you know, the reason we terminated that or suspended it was because we had so many openings in the jail. We've been able to hire some because you all gave us some money to hire people. So we look to put that back in force. But we go to the landfill and pick up trash quite often.
That would probably be a good idea. I know Mr. Scares has got one of his road worries, me and him both. If we could get where people could, I guess, call about their road and maybe get it coordinated where we could do some of these roads, because that makes a big difference to go down through the roads and pick up all that trash.
Well, I think people like to see those inmates out working too.
Yeah.
The ones that are able, the ones we can get out.
Thanks.
All right. The one thing that well, two things. One is a question, one is a statement. The other, the times. You know, I was having a problem before I retired with people coming to me at work saying that they didn't have the sites open like an hour early because they're going to work at 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. And I'm just wondering, have we done any of that? Or are you still at 7 p.m. or 7 a.m.? I don't know. I'm just asking.
7 a.m. until 8 p.m. at 5 sites.
The other thing is, when it comes to recycling, I could put my wife in charge. Because now that I have to wash dishes and say, yes ma'am, I have 3 big bags of recyclable paper, plastic. I can't even move down the counter. So I could very well hire her for cheap, Mr. Smith. Moving on. Pet Center budget review discussion. Ms. Kimberly G. Vanderhyde.
Yes. We do have the budget for the Pet Center to bring before you again tonight. It was first brought to you back at the January meeting, and we revisited that budget, and Mr. McLaughlin has done a lot of work in reviewing what LHS has spent compared to the cost that we're incurring, or we think that we'll incur in the next 6 months. We did have an Animal Welfare Committee meeting that was held on February the 12th, where a new revised budget was presented, and that budget was given to you all in your board packet and the work session packet, and also it'll be in tonight's meeting as well for you all to vote on that. It was a request at that meeting that we bring back a comparison of annual costs for the Pet Center, what we're proposing as opposed to LHS. Some of the figures that we showed you all at Animal Welfare as a comparison, it didn't have everything. We didn't really get great data from LHS. So some of those items we have estimated, because it wasn't because they didn't have the cost. They just didn't share those costs, or those costs were absorbed in Lynchburg. So it's really hard to compare what we're going to pay for this operation compared to what Lynchburg paid, because we don't have another operation that can kind of pick up the slack. So the first sheet that's in your packet shows that estimate in comparison to LHS, and this is their year 17 through June 30, 18. We did include some monies for management for LHS. So those figures weren't reflected in the $336,000 figure. They did have management in Lynchburg that were overseeing the operation of the shelter. So we did estimate what that probably did cost, because it was at least 2 people in Lynchburg that were doing that. And you can go along and see exactly what we did estimate. The 3 asterisks that are by numbers are numbers that we did estimate, because we felt like you all needed to see a more apples to apples instead of some things that weren't reported, so that you could kind of see. Our costs are still a little bit higher than what we think Lynchburg spent, but they did have, you know, more ability and grants that helped offset some of their costs. So with that, I'm here to
entertain any questions you have, and Mr. McLaughlin is here. He has worked extremely hard. He gave a great presentation to the Animal Welfare Committee, and I'm sure if all of you haven't gotten a copy of that presentation, I think it would benefit you to have that.
Any reports? Yes, sir.
Question. The budget that's on page 63 in the packet, it says I guess that portion there is 866,627.
Right, that's the annualized.
Okay, but if you double what you're proposing for 6 months, down the next page, that's 875 and some change. They don't.
Correct. And the reason for that is we had to pay $7,000 for the fine that we received. We won't have that next year. So of course that's been eliminated. That's why the cost is a little bit less for next year.
I had a question that was asked to me by somebody. The maintenance on the building and the groundskeeping, is that in addition to this? The county pays for that, is that
Correct.
right?
And that's already budgeted.
In buildings and grounds.
In buildings and
Do we
grounds.
know what that estimated? What, in other words, what are we already putting into the summer outside this budget? More idea?
Not in that budget. Yeah, it's grass mowing.
That's basically, yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, if, there's something wrong with the building, then they have to come out and fix something.
Yeah, Daryl has to run through.
And we do have costs that, we did incur with building and grounds. There were a lot of issues with water, and, it was some kind of big costs to get those things up and running like they should be. But pretty much, I think they're on, an even keel now, so it would just be anything out of the ordinary. So other than just the grass mowing, and all of that included in the county's contract, and that's for all of our buildings and all of our properties.
Yes, sir, Mr. Blackstock.
This particular budget is being proposed. This doesn't include any monies that we may go on from revenue at all.
No.
So if we do fundraisers and things of that nature,
It will offset.
do we have any kind of an estimate? That could be significant if we do fundraisers between now and the end of the year. And that's I'll be honest with you, that's a sticking point or sore point that I have, is in community. We had people that show up for animal lovers. I'm one myself. But we can't expect the taxpayers to pay for the Cadillac model when we need volunteers and fundraisers to help reduce this cost. I guess what we're looking at is a worst case scenario, and we're going to do some fundraisers and things of that nature to offset some of these costs.
And we will have some estimates for revenue, but being early on, we're not really sure what that's going to be. But we will put some estimates in for revenues, and I don't know if Mr. McLaughlin wants to share from Animal Welfare the other night. Would you want to share that grant, that opportunity?
So we have a few different things that we're looking at to offset the costs. I mentioned in the presentation, if you remember, a few of the programs we had where we get money back that goes into spay neuter through the St. Hubert's program, transferring in the small dogs from the California shelter, which we adopt out. They get a higher adoption rate, which offsets our costs. It's a profitable adoption. We now have a low-cost rabies clinic and flea market set up with Chatham Animal Hospital. Planned for the first weekend of May. We're looking at a golf tournament, a few other things that the SPCA is doing with us, being a 501, so that people can donate, get the benefit of the tax write-off, and they've set up an account. People can donate through them, and they'll hand the money over to us just to help entice more people to donate. And I've seen our revenue coming in the month of February. We're already like $3,000 ahead of what we did in January, and I expect that to continue to grow.
Can you just give us, I understand that, like a golf, I know if I've planned a lot of golf functions over the years to raise revenue. So I know an idea of what I'll get off of a 18-hole tournament if everybody participates. Can you just give us some kind of number? I don't think your board's gonna haul you back in here in July and say, you didn't raise the money you told us, but, you know, we gotta make this thing more palatable to the public.
Absolutely.
How much money do you think you could raise?
In the first 6 months,
I'm not asking you to
Probably.
I'm not asking you to vote, just tell me what you think.
Golf tournaments you've done in the past.
That's what
So
I'm
golf tournament, we're looking at somewhere from, I've seen with the previous ones I've done, 8,000 to 12,000 from the golf tournament. Adoption fees and everything else entailed. If we adjust some of our pricing, which I've discussed with Greg, I would say at the minimum 50,000 during the first 6 months.
How much?
50,000 during the first 6 months, and I think that's going to continue to grow. And I'm erring on the conservative side. I do think that a full year under our belt, like next year, I think that is completely reasonable to see 100 plus. Throughout the course of the year, we get the adoption programs going, we get more outreach things going. I've already started to see an increase in donations and grant-related money. We're talking about 6 weeks, and we're already seeing it starting to come alive and starting to connect more and more with people. So my last shelter, it took us a little while, and we were taking in over $300,000 a year to offset what our expenses were. I think that's completely conceivable within a few years to be somewhere in that ballpark, and that's also not counting whatever potential grants we can get or using our partner organization as a friends of going through the SPCA to possibly get some grant funding for the shelter. I just actually got commitment for $5,000 from a foundation to go towards some of our expenses. That we'll be receiving that money soon, and you know, this is just the tip of the iceberg, so we will be working on any which way we can keep the cost down, minimize the cost, and your average citizen dropping off a $5 bag of cat food or a pack of paper towels, things like that add up very quickly and cuts down a lot of our costs. And a lot of people seem very happy to do little things like that and feel like they're helping.
Mr. Chairman, I note that we've made it very clear to James that fundraising is a key part of his job, but so far he's spent a lot of time trying to get the efficiency and the operation improved at the shelter itself. So we're working on staffing to try to get him more free time to focus on the fundraising as opposed to the day-to-day duties.
Any other questions?
So I guess, you know, if we can raise $50,000, which seems pretty doable, I would bring this down to about 380 something and some change, which would be $760.75 for me out of the taxpayer. But it would increase over time.
Any other discussion? I do have an idea, and I just presented it, but I'm just saying.
Oh, I've already emailed James.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. You know, I think we need to get creative about fundraising. We've talked on the executive team until we're blue in the face that regular fundraisers aren't going to work here. We've got to sell an ATV. We've got to do what's the 4-passenger thing called? Razor. I think golf tournament has its place. I think the thrift store has a very big place. And I don't know about y'all, every time I go and leave my trash at the compactor, I see things that should be going to the thrift store.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's reasonable, and we haven't talked about this on the revenue side, but I think it's reasonable to have a goal for $150,000 in cash proceeds next year.
The thrift store, the Hurt Volunteer Fire Department, and the Altavista Fire Department partner on in our community raises a significant amount of money monthly after paying the paid staff and the bills. I mean, it's a cash flow. And there's no reason, when you go to dumpsters, we see this all the time, we've discussed this, but people put out shoes, toys. I saw some really, I mean, it's a lot of neat stuff sitting there at the dumpster.
Don't tell Richard, but I got a fishing rod last week.
Scavenging bill.
We talked about setting something aside where people replace these items, and we could put it in the thrift store.
I agree.
And we need to be doing these things.
We're going to, with Matt's help, do a commercial campaign, multi-year commitments. Yeah, I think 150 is an achievable number.
We have a sponsorship packet that's getting ready to come back over for Greg and to take a look at, which I've already had some interest in paying for sponsorships by like the cat towers and things like that at the shelter, which will help generate some more revenue. And with the thrift store, the SPCA, there's a couple of ladies that aren't working that have committed to 3 days a week. They can be running the thrift store if we open it at the pet center, and we just give them a small percentage of the profits from the thrift store, which cuts our overhead. So I think that's something we can definitely work with, and we can build to get a little more revenue going.
I love that idea.
Anything else? Okay, moving on. Other reports from the staff? Any reports from the staff?
None.
This is for the board, business meeting discussion item. Does the board have any items they would like to put on and discuss at this particular time? Hearing none? Yes, sir?
I don't know if I can add this, but it's actually, I received an email from a citizen in Mr. Miller's district, but he may have received it too. There's an area that basically the public used. It was a private piece of private property. It's on the Bannister River. It's located on the Bannister River, right there at what we call Whitefall. It's a beautiful area. The public, Mr. Johnson didn't run people off for years and years. He's extremely ill. He run a mill at Mount Airy. But a local citizen who is a big environmentalist has leased the property now. And he says, he contacted me, and I assume you, and he says that there are probably 250 tires dumped along the Bannister River and on that property at various over it, and he's willing to haul them if we'll waive the fees at the landfill. Well, you know, I guess they think we throw them in the landfill. We don't. We pay a company to, I assume we do that now. And that could be a substantial amount of money. But this is and I know, I'm just throwing this out for staff and for the board to think about. This is private property, but this is only Bannister River, and these tires will end up in the river. He's willing to haul them and get them out from down there if we work with him. So
He wants to waive the fee.
Yeah, waive the. He think. Well, the citizen thought he asked, can we waive the tipping fee for the tires? But we don't do a tipping fee to dump tires in the landfill because we have a company pick them up. I don't know what the cost is, and you know, I thought, well, maybe we seek a environmental group that has to give grants to pay for the if it's $4 a tire, maybe they would do that. But I'm asking for ideas. I think Dr. Miller, I guess you feel the same way. But I'm trying to. This is a very important environmental issue.
Well, I think we just shipped off a load this week of about probably 600 tires, and our bill was around $1,058.
So that's less than $1.50 a tire.
We charge $3 to make a
That's
phone
about what it
call.
costs us.
Could we waive it down to the actual cost of the tire? Is that something we could look at?
How many tires?
He says it's probably $250.
There's a place on the night's meeting called Matters from the Worksession.
Right.
So there's 2 on there now, but that's in there in the legislative committee. You could add a third, and your motion could be just charge this individual what our actual cost is for the tires. And the board could either vote it up or vote it down.
What is the $150 our actual cost? Or is it $2? What is the actual cost? Because you said it was a handling.
It's in that $1 to $1.50 range.
That's the actual cost?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did send him a letter, same delivery this morning.
So is the board's consensus to add this tonight? Kevin, can you take that up on, and that'll be on the business meeting as the third item from work session today?
Is that all? Okay, we're moving to item 8, closed session. Mr. Cluster, we need a vote. I need a motion to...
I'll read it, and then everybody's going to vote on the computer, okay? We have one closed session tonight: discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, or of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiated strategy of the public body. Staff contact Richard N. Hicks. Legal authority, Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711A3. Subject matter, potential solid waste convenience center sites. Purpose, discussion or acquisition of real property for a public purpose.
All right, I need a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Second. All right. Any discussion? Everybody cast your vote, please.
You good? I hit it.
Okay. Passed unanimous. If you will, grab you something to eat as you
We're
go.
now in closed session. Be it resolved, we return to open session at 6:25, or 6:20. Be it resolved at a meeting of the Pittsylvania County Board of Supervisors on February 19, 2019, the board hereby certifies by recorded vote that the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorized the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. If any member believes there was departure from the requirements of the Act, he shall so state prior to the vote indicating the substance of the departure. The statement shall be recorded in the board minutes. Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Blackstock?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Declare the meeting adjourned.